For most of my 20s, I was throwing up weekly from acid reflux. PPIs only made it worse. I did a H. pylori breath test, which came back negative. It absolutely wasn't. Little disclaimer here, yes, I am a physician assistant, but this video is for educational purposes only, should not be taken as medical advice. Please always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health supplement or medications. H. pylori is one of the most underdiagnosed root causes of chronic gut symptoms that I see in my practice. It nearly wrecked my own digestive system for a decade before I figured it out. Little quick context here. I had severe GERD for most of my 20s, aggressive vomiting at least once a week. It would ruin all of my weekend plans. PPIs was basically the conventional fix every time I went to a GI doctor. It made my symptoms a lot worse, which is now something I see in clients all the time. I got tested for H. pylori using a breath test and it came back negative, so we moved on. Years later, when I started getting into functional health, I ran a GI map on myself. H. pylori showed up extremely high. The breath test had missed it because that test is just genuinely not as sensitive as a GI map is, which is basically a stool based PCR. Once we treated it, my acid reflux completely resolved after 10 plus years of misery. That is the kind of story that I hear weekly from my clients. So today I'm going to walk you through what H. pylori actually is, what it does to your body, why it's so hard to treat, and the partner piece that nobody talks about, and the stack that I rely on in my practice to treat this for my clients. Save this video and stay with me till the end because the partner piece is usually the reason that a lot of people will relapse with these symptoms. All right, so what actually is H. pylori? It's a bacterial infection of the stomach. About half of the global population has it, although the prevalence in the United States is a bit lower. The bacteria can live in your stomach for years, decades, even your entire life. And what it's doing is inflaming the lining and creating problems that most people will never be able to trace back to it. It is spiral shaped, which matters in a second. It basically can survive stomach acid by neutralizing the area around itself with an enzyme called urease. Then it buries into the mucus layer that protects your stomach lining. That is how it survives in one of the most hostile environments in your body, aka your stomach, where stomach acid is very high. These are the symptoms to watch out for. The frustrating thing about H. pylori is it can be silent for years, meaning that these symptoms are vague. You might not know it's coming from this. But here are the most common ones: chronic acid reflux or GERD, burning or gnawing sensation, especially on an empty stomach, nausea, sometimes vomiting. This was me. Bloating after meals, belching or gas, loss of appetite or feeling full after a few bites, unexplained weight changes, iron deficiency anemia that doesn't go away even if you take iron supplementation, B12 deficiency, bad breath that doesn't go away if you've had dental work. And the last cluster, the iron and B12 deficiencies, this is a really big clue, okay? Your H. pylori suppresses your stomach acid over time, and you need stomach acid in order to absorb these minerals, especially iron. So, a woman who keeps showing up with low ferritin and unexplained anemia, who's just been told to take more iron, is often a woman that has underdiagnosed gut infection. Okay, so what H. pylori can lead to. This is where it stops just being a quality of life issue and becomes a serious medical one. Untreated H. pylori is the leading cause of stomach ulcers. Conventional medicine used to blame ulcers on stress and spicy food. Then, in the 1980s, two researchers proved that it was a bacterial infection, and one of them actually won a Nobel Prize for it. So, if you have an ulcer or a history of ulcers, you most certainly have or have had H. pylori infection. It's also a major cause of chronic gastritis, which is just inflammation basically of the stomach lining. Long term, that inflammation damages the cells that produce the stomach acid, which is why we see so many people with H. pylori with chronically low stomach acid. This is something that I had going on. And here's the heavy one, okay? H. pylori is classified by the World Health Organization as a group 1 carcinogen. It is the biggest risk factor for stomach cancer. Most people with H. pylori, they don't develop cancer, luckily, but the risk is real enough that it is genuinely not something to wait and just see how it goes. It also will drive chronic GERD. This is what I had. The mechanism behind this trips a lot of people up, okay? Reflux is often a low stomach acid problem, especially with H. pylori running in the background. The bacteria is going to suppress your stomach acid, so food doesn't break down properly. Gas is going to build up. That pressure pushes stomach acid up through the lower esophageal sphincter. Also, that sphincter can't close if your stomach acid is too low. PPIs, that's the treatment for H. pylori, or sorry, PPIs is the treatment for GERD. And what that's going to do is lower your stomach acid even more. So it's going to feel better short term, but long term, it makes the issue worse. That is the trap I was stuck in for many years. Why is H. pylori so hard to treat? This part is a little bit weird, so listen to this. H. pylori is one of the hardest gut infections to clear. This is whether you go conventional or functional medicine route. Two reasons. One, the bacteria will burrow in your stomach lining. It will tuck itself into the mucus layer where antibiotics and supplements cannot reach it. So whatever you're using has to penetrate that mucus. The second thing is H. pylori forms a biofilm around it. A biofilm is basically a protective shield that the bacteria builds around itself, and it makes treatment significantly harder. So you can hit it with a single antimicrobial and barely make a dent. This is why successful H. pylori treatment, conventional or holistic, almost always uses 3 to 4 different agents at the same time. The conventional protocol is often called triple or quadruple therapy, so it's usually 2 antibiotics plus a PPI, sometimes plus bismuth. Even with all that, the failure rate is usually between 20 to 30%, depending on the strain and the region. The functional protocol that I use is similar in spirit. So we're usually stacking 3 to 4 antimicrobials at once. No one single agent is going to completely break through the biofilm. All right, this is the part that's a bit interesting here is the partner piece, okay? So here is where I see most people relapse with H. pylori. And this is where conventional providers often miss this part. H. pylori is contagious, okay? It spreads through saliva. So if you're sharing drinks, kissing, sharing utensils, you can treat your H. pylori successfully, but if your partner has not treated it, you will just get it back, even if you've went through months of protocols. I see this in my practice all the time. Someone clears it, they might feel better for a little bit, and then their symptoms come back in. We retest and it's back. If it's the same household, you're getting the same exposure and it's very easy reinfection. So if you have H. pylori, your partner also should be tested, ideally with a GI map since breath test commonly misses it. And if your partner has it, they should treat it with the same timeline that you do. Otherwise, you're just going to ping pong it back and forth to each other. Okay, so my functional treatment stack. This is the part that I get asked about constantly. I will share the categories and what I reach for, but please understand this is not a do-it-yourself protocol. Dosing, timing, sequencing, the order that you stack things in matters a lot. So I often see when people try to treat themselves, they half do it right, and then they end up worse than where they started because what happens is they do a partial kill, and then the bacteria becomes more resistant, so then they can't treat it long term. All right, so these are the agents that I rely on. Number one is masticum. This is a tree resin from the Greek island of Chios that's been studied specifically for H. pylori. It can penetrate the mucus layer and disrupt the biofilm. This is the backbone of any functional H. pylori protocol that I start. Berberine is the second one, so this is a broad spectrum antimicrobial. It's also great for blood sugar regulation, which is a nice side added benefit. Oil of oregano is the next one. This is another broad antimicrobial. It is very strong, it's effective, and it adds another angle of attack so the bacteria has fewer places to hide. I always add a biofilm disruptor, so I typically reach for something like NAC. I almost always layer this in alongside the antimicrobials. NAC can help to break down that biofilm, which I mentioned earlier, and it lets the rest of the stack actually work and combat the bacteria. Skipping the step is one of the main reasons that I see people fail a protocol. You can be hitting H. pylori with the right antimicrobials, but if the biofilm is still intact, it's like throwing rocks at a bulletproof window. All right, next is an adhesion inhibitor. So I usually use something called DGL. I'm not going to attempt to say the full word because I can never say it. Something licorice. DGL does two things I care about in an H. pylori protocol. One, it's going to soothe and protect the stomach lining while antimicrobials are doing their thing. And it can act as an adhesion inhibitor, meaning it interferes with H. pylori's ability to stick to the stomach wall in the first place. I usually run DGL alongside the rest of the protocol, especially if someone has a lot of symptoms, like they have a lot of reflux. Pylorosil from Orthomolecular. So this is a clinical grade combination product that I use a lot. So I love using this because it combines a lot of these things that I just mentioned into one supplement. So you will typically have to take high doses of it. Usually I do like 2 capsules 3 times a day, depending on the person. But it has a lot of things combined in it. It has mastic gum, berberine, bismuth, and zinc carnosine. I've had really strong results with using this in my coaching practice. Orthomolecular is also a practitioner only line, which is part of why I trust it. If you use pylorosil, the only thing you potentially might have to add on top of that is NAC and potentially DGL. Again, this depends on the person and it depends what else we're seeing with their GI map. I usually run a protocol like this for around 60 to 90 days, retest and adjust from there. All right, we're going to talk about betaine and apple cider vinegar because there's some nuance here. This is a big one, and I want you to understand this. If you have active H. pylori infection, do not add betaine HCl or apple cider vinegar to support stomach acid yet. I see people read about low stomach acid online and they jump straight to taking betaine and then they make their symptoms worse. The reason is because with H. pylori, you have an inflamed stomach. Your stomach lining is already raw. So if you add more acid in before you clear the infection, you can feel really poor and you can also drive ulcer formation. So you want to treat the infection first and then rebuild from there. Once the infection is cleared and the stomach lining has time to heal, that's when stomach acid support is really, really important, okay? H. pylori does a number on your parietal cells and you'll genuinely be running low for a while. So long term after treatment, betaine HCl with pepsin or a small amount of apple cider vinegar before meals can actually really help your digestion. Just don't do it while the infection is active. You actually want to keep your stomach acid high after you treat this to prevent the H. pylori from coming back again. Low stomach acid is what creates an environment where bacteria can overgrow. All right, some diet notes here. I often get asked about an H. pylori diet. I have a lot of very specific diets for different gut protocols. Like, for example, if you have candida overgrowth, I'm also going to recommend a candida diet. But the truth is, with H. pylori, I usually don't run a super restrictive diet with these clients. There's no one magic food that will kill H. pylori in the way that mastic gum does. But what does matter here is eating a very clean whole food diet that supports your stomach lining and is going to replenish the nutrients that are low because of the H. pylori infection. So, usually across the board, people with H. pylori will have low iron, B12, zinc, magnesium, sometimes even vitamin C. So, a diet that's built around protein, plenty of vegetables, real fats, slow cooked, easily digestible foods, so like soups and stews, tend to help more than any restrictive protocol. Avoid alcohol while you're on the treatment. Alcohol is going to irritate the stomach lining and interfere with the antimicrobials. Spicy food and coffee can be irritating during the active treatment as well, but they don't have to be off limits forever. The bigger picture is that H. pylori usually exists alongside other gut imbalances. So you could have dysbiosis, candida, sometimes parasites. So while we're treating the H. pylori infection, we're also looking at the rest of the gut picture. And that's usually where my gut protocols shine. All right, so back to my own story, back to where I started here. A decade of weekly vomiting, a negative breath test, years of PPIs that only made things worse, and then I had a GI map that finally caught the infection. A targeted protocol included most of what I just walked you through here, and now my reflux is completely gone. If you're sitting on chronic GERD, ulcers, unexplained anemia, or that low grade nausea and bloating that you've just kind of learned to live with, please get a real test run. The breath test is the standard in conventional medicine and it often misses cases. A GI map is more sensitive and gives you context on the rest of your gut at the same time. If anything I just said sounds like your situation, this is exactly what we work on in TCY. We run GI map testing, we build a real H. pylori protocol to check for retesting, screen the partner, rebuild the gut to get you back on track so you don't end up right back here. We work with clients nationwide virtually. Click the link in the description below to book a free call with my team. If this video helped you, save it, share it with a friend. Thanks so much, guys. I'll see you in the next one.